Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be talking about the Battle of Saratoga, which honestly wasn't just a regular win for the Americans. This battle was the moment where everything changed. It was a big confidence boost for the colonies. It flipped how the world saw the revolution, and it straight up forced the British to rethink their whole game plan. It's called the turning point for a reason, because after this, independence started to feel real. Not just some dream people were hoping for. First slide. The Battle of Saratoga, America's turning point. A pivotal American victory in the Revolutionary War. Occurred in September through October 1777 in New York. Marked a shift in global perception of the war. Gave hope and momentum to the American cause. Overview of the battle. Saratoga actually wasn't just one big fight. It was a series of battles that happened in September and October of 1777, up in upstate New York. The British plan, led by General John Burgoyne, was to come down from Canada and link up with other British forces, basically cutting off New England from the rest of the colonies. But that plan fell apart fast. America forces under General Horatio Gates, and yeah, we'll talk about the Benedict Arnold in a second, managed to slow them down and trap them in wilderness. You had battles like Freeman's Farm and Bemis Heights, where Arnold, even though he'd been stripped of command, just charged in and turned the tide. And while the British were stuck, American militias kept pouring in. The longer it dragged on, the worse it got for Burgoyne. Slide 2. Overview of the battle. British General Burgoyne aimed to isolate New England. American forces led by General Gates and Benedict Arnold. Battles at Freeman's Farm and Bemis Heights were decisive. British army was encircled and cut off from reinforcements. Slide 3. British surrender. So after getting totally surrounded with no supplies, no reinforcements, and winter closing in, Burgoyne had no choice but to surrender. That happened on October 17th of 1777. It was one of the biggest British defeats of the entire war. They lost around 1,000 troops. Another 6,000 were captured. Meanwhile, American losses were around 300, which is insane when you think about how much was on the line. The surrender was officially signed in what's called the Convention of Saratoga. And when news of it hit Europe, let's just say a lot of countries started paying attention. Slide 3. British surrender. Burgoyne surrendered on October 17th of 1777. Surrender formalized in the Convention of Saratoga. Around 6,000 British troops captured, 1,000 killed/wounded. American losses were minimal at around 300 casualties. Slide 4. International impact. This is where things really start to shift up to this point. America was kind of out there fighting on its own. But after Saratoga, France realized, hey, these guys might actually pull this off. By 1778, France signed an alliance with the United States, and we are talking full support, troops, ships, money, supplies, the works. Then later on, Spain and the Dutch Republic got involved too. Suddenly, Britain wasn't just fighting a rebellion in its colonies. It was fighting a global war, and that pressure changed everything. It's crazy to think how one battle in the woods of New York had that kind of ripple effect. Slide 4. International impact. France saw American capability and joined the war in 1778. Spain and the Dutch Republic provided indirect support. British military was stretched across multiple fronts. War transformed from rebellion to international conflict. Slide 5. Boost in American morale. And back home, the vibe completely shifted. Soldiers started believing in the cause. People were writing letters home saying this war could actually be won. You had pastors preaching that the victory was a sign from God, and newspapers running with it like it was the best news ever. Towns started rallying behind the Continental Army. Churches gave thanks, and people who had been on the fence about supporting the war, they started stepping up with supplies, donations, even joining the local militias. This wasn't just a military win. It was a psychological one. It made people believe, and that's something you really can't measure on a battlefield. Slide 5. Victory inspired soldiers and civilians alike. Clergy preached Saratoga as a sign of divine favor. Recruits joined and soldiers re-enlisted with pride. Patriotism surged through newspapers and town halls. Slide 6. Leadership and betrayal. So real quick, we got to talk about Benedict Arnold Gates. Got most of the credit for the win, but everyone who knows their history knows Arnold was the guy who actually made the difference on the ground. Even after being taken out of command, Arnold charged into battle, led his men like a madman, and helped break the British lines at Bemis Heights. But because of politics, jealousy, and whatever else, he didn't get recognized. He got passed over, humiliated, and honestly bitter. And we all know what happened next. He switched sides, betrayed everything he fought for, so Saratoga is kind of wild that way. It's a story of heroic leadership and also one of the most famous betrayals in American history. Slide 6. General Gates praised, but Arnold was key in battle. Arnold led courageous charges at critical moments, felt slighted and betrayed after the battle. His defection to the British remains a historical paradox. Slide 7. Strategic and political consequences. Now, from a strategy and leadership angle, this battle shook the British Parliament. They were panicking. They scraped their northern campaign entirely and focused on the south, hoping to find more loyalist support. But that southern strategy ended up stretching their forces even thinner. The Americans had momentum now. Congress, which had been shaky before, suddenly looked legit. This win proved the colonies could organize, resist, and lead. That built real political unity and gave leaders like Franklin the leverage they needed to negotiate abroad. Slide 7. British strategy pivoted to the southern colonies. Saratoga proved the strength of American resistance. Continental Congress gained credibility and unity, boosted cooperation from state militias and citizens. The legacy of Saratoga. Slide 8. In the big picture, Saratoga was more than just a battlefield win. It was the moment when the colonies started to act and feel like a real nation. It showed the world and ourselves that America had what it took to go the distance. This battle created a new level of unity. State governments worked together more effectively, military leaders became more strategic, and it shaped the idea of what it meant to be an American. Someone who could stand up, fight back, and win. Slide 8. Legacy of Saratoga. Revolution shifted from desperation to momentum. Symbolized the rise of American identity and unity. Demonstrated colonial ability to lead and fight globally. Saratoga became a morale and strategic foundation. In conclusion, Saratoga changed everything. It wasn't just a victory. It was a statement to the British, to France, and to the colonists themselves. It said, "We are not going anywhere. We can do this." It opened the door to global alliances, brought a scattered movement together, and gave everyday Americans a reason to keep pushing. It was the spark that lit the fire. And without Saratoga, we might not be having this conversation today. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your time.